two people can retire with the exact same amount of money in their portfolio but can have completely different results. One of them doesn't ever have to worry about retirement income again, and the other one completely runs out of money. Now, the difference isn't how much money they had in the portfolio to begin with, it is the strategy they use to access that income from their portfolios. Today, I'm going to rank 4 different retirement income strategies from worst to the best. Hi, and welcome to the Money Matters MD show. My name is Dr. Abhishek Gadre. I'm a practicing physician, and I help high-income professionals like you take control of your money. So today we'll talk about 4 different types of retirement income strategies, and it's not about the 4% rule. So there's an important distinction between the amount of money you want to pull out of your retirement portfolio versus the way you pull it out and where the money is actually coming from. Now, most of us know what the 4% rule is. The 4% rule says that you can pull out 4% of your portfolio every single year without ever running out of money. Let's say you're 65 years old and you have a $2.5 million portfolio. You can safely pull out $100,000 every single year and again adjust it for inflation as well moving forward and never have to worry about running out of money. On top of this, you'll also be able to access the Social Security benefit, which you can add on top. Now, as I already mentioned, today's video is not about the 4% rule or exactly how much you should withdraw from your portfolio. It's about how exactly you will pull out that 4% out of your portfolio to generate that income. So I'll give credit where it's due. Today's video is based on financial research from Withdrawal, and I read about it in Christine Benz's personal finance book, How to Retire. This is an excellent book, and Withdrawal actually himself wrote one of the chapters on retirement income strategies in this book. And by the way, if you're interested in purchasing the book from Amazon, I have an affiliate link down below in the description. Now, let's talk about the 4 quadrants of retirement income style. Now, there's 2 important questions to ask to differentiate between these 4 quadrants. The first question is, who's actually taking the risk? Is it you or is it an insurance company? Are you deferring the risk to somebody else and not taking it yourself? The second question to ask is, how much market risk are you actually taking in your portfolio? Are you okay with the market going up and down during retirement, which inevitably will happen? Or do you want to build in some security and safety of income within your portfolio? All right, so let's start with rank number 4, which is the right bottom quadrant. And the typical example in this risk wrap strategy would be an index universal life policy or a variable annuity. Now, think about who's taking the risk here. The insurance company is actually assuming all the risks. So you saved and invested all your life, and you actually sold a big part of your portfolio to the insurance company so that they assume the risk. And you're also invested in the market. And look at the y-axis. Instead of built-in safety, you're actually taking the market risk. You're taking the probabilistic risk of the market going up or down. Now, this kind of sounds like a Goldilocks approach and too good to be true, that there's no risk on you. The insurance company is taking all the risk while you're still able to invest in the S&P 500 and get those high returns. But turns out, in my opinion, this is actually the worst way to invest, because insurance companies and the agents who are actually selling these policies charge extremely high commissions, and it's almost a sales-based push type strategy when it comes to these specifically variable annuities in this scenario, or the index universal life policies. These are whole life policies in which you can still invest within any index fund like S&P 500, for example. Now, the problem is whenever you mix insurance and investing together in one basket, it turns out to be just a big mess, because the fees on these type of products is extremely high. All these products are packaged inside of very complicated rules, and you really can't compare one variable annuity with another variable annuity, because they all have different bells and whistles, and they all want to sell you their unique product. And again, I would recommend staying away from them. There is a reason they're considered almost tainted in the retirement income industry. Now, if you really do want to buy an annuity, I would recommend buying a SPIA, which stands for SPIA, Single Premium Immediate Annuity. And that brings us to quadrant number 3. Now, in the left lower quadrant of the page, you're still giving your portfolio to an insurance company, so it's all their risk, but you're not taking the market risk. You want a safe income every single month, and the insurance company will provide you that fixed income every single month in retirement. And that's called the SPIA. Now, another type of person who would really benefit from having a fixed income annuity would be somebody with cognitive decline. If you're developing Alzheimer's or Parkinson's and you just can't handle your own accounts and you just want money showing up in your account every single month from the insurance company, you don't have to think about it. You can consider buying a SPIA, which is a excellent replacement on top of whatever you would get from Social Security. Now, another form of income protection could be pensions. A lot of people don't have pensions anymore. But if you were in a job, if you're one of those lucky people who has a pension, that would lie in this quadrant. So basically, all of these income protection type products will pay out an income every single month until your death. Now, you can also purchase bells and whistles. So you can buy an annuity for a couple. So even after you pass, your spouse will still get a part of the income every single month. Now, unfortunately, what's not available in the market is inflation adjusted annuity, which would be exactly same as Social Security, which adjusts for inflation every single year. Turns out there was not that much demand for it, and these products tended to be more expensive. But that tends to be one of the biggest risks in retirement is inflation, especially if it's really, really high. It can start eroding in your retirement portfolio, and the same amount of monthly income you're getting earlier may not be enough 5 or 10 years from now. Now that brings us to quadrant number 2. Now, if you want to shoot for the highest amount of portfolio value, you want to take that market risk and you want to own all of your portfolio yourself. This is the most common way of investing in retirement. This is called a total return portfolio approach. So basically, most of retirees will want to own their own portfolio. And most common example would be a 60-40 portfolio in which you own 60% stocks and 40% bonds, maybe have some international diversification. And you're basically selling off a part of your portfolio every single month and generating an income from the portfolio. Now, some retirees are in a 100% equity portfolio, even in retirement, and they really want to take that high risk that the index can offer, like the S&P 500. Now, think about the S&P 500. It can be up as much as 50% in any given year, but in the worst possible year, it could be down 37%. One year, your portfolio goes up. The other year, suddenly you just don't have enough money to retire. So that's the risk you're taking in this type of total return portfolio approach. So this is what is called a sequence of returns risk. And this is the highest in a S&P 500 or market-based portfolio approach, where you have a bad year and your portfolio is down and you're still selling stocks and generating income, because what else are you going to do? That is where 60-40 type portfolio or a balanced portfolio comes in. Now, in the total return portfolio approach, you're not necessarily treating your stocks and bonds differently. You're just going to sell both every single year to generate that income. But you do have the option to start selling a little bit more bonds if your stocks are taking a big hit. And that's the advantage of having a balanced portfolio. Now, the other option within the total portfolio approach is dividend investing. Now, a lot of retirees will want to buy high dividend paying stocks, or like a VYM, which is the Vanguard High Dividend Yield ETF, which gives you a high dividend return, and you don't actually have to sell the underlying stock investment. You can just live off of the dividends. Now, mathematically, it's pretty much proven to have both growth and value stocks within your portfolio, because more recently, growth stocks have done ridiculously well. And if you just had invested in value, you'd be lagging way behind over the last 15 years. Again, in the next 15 years, things might be completely different, while value might just take over growth. But dividend-only investing is pretty much known to mathematically generate inferior results and inferior total portfolio returns. But at the end of the day, it comes down to behavior versus mathematics. So 80% of personal finance is behavior, only 20% is actually math. If you're happy with your portfolio of high dividend paying stocks, it just helps you to be reassured that you're not actually selling any underlying stocks and just living on the dividends. And that is where behavior beats mathematics. It's all about what you feel the most comfortable with. All right, so let's jump right into rank number 1, which is, in my opinion, the best way to generate retirement income. Before we jump into the details, One quick little thing, this is not financial advice. This is for educational and entertainment purposes only. All right, so let's talk about rank one, which is the bucketing approach. The other name is time segmentation. Now, the time segmentation is more of like a mental model to think about your portfolio and dividing into three different parts, or maybe four or five different parts, and basically based on when you need to spend this money. So often in the three-part portfolio approach, the first part is a 2-year cash bucket, which you'll be spending money out of right now. Now, from year 3 to year 10, you're going to have a bond bucket. And for years 10 and beyond, you're going to save all of those investments in equities or stocks. So that's how you divide the three different buckets and segment them based on time and when you will want to spend money out of these buckets. Now, as you spend money down from cash, you can still sell some of your bonds and some of your stocks and keep adding to your cash part of the portfolio so that you never have to actually sell the stocks when the stocks are actually down. Now, let's take two scenarios. Let's say you had a great year and the stocks are up 25%. Now, you can actually sell part of your stock allocation in bucket number 3 and put some money in bucket number 1, which is your cash reserve, so that if next year, scenario number 2, let's say the stocks go down 20%, you don't have to actually sell those stocks in a down negative year. In this negative year, you can just sell cash, which is a completely safe investment. You just have money sitting in short-term treasuries or a money market account or a high yield account, and you're not taking market risk in that bucket at all. Even in that second bucket, within that bond bucket, let's say you had a really bad year like 2022, where your bond portfolio completely crashed. By the way, 2022 was a complete exception, and the Fed has never raised interest rates vertically up like that. And that is why bonds were devalued and lost so much value. But if a year like 2022 happens, people with the bucketing approach were really, really happy. Guess what? Because you had the 2 year of cash reserves sitting in your account, and mentally, you had already planned for a bad year. If the bonds and stocks were down, you'll just spend cash and never sell any of those down parts of your portfolio. So that's why I personally like the bucketing approach quite a bit. Now, the question is, what's the real difference between rank 1 and rank 2, between the time segmentation, the bucketing approach, or the total return approach? Now, the difference is the mental model of the bucketing is, you'll spend the cash bucket first and the bond bucket next, and the stocks are just going to keep growing for long-term investment. While in the total return approach, you're constantly spending down your 60-40 portfolio in equal proportions and keeping that fixed asset allocation. And it all comes down to rebalancing as well. And you're a little bit more opportunistic in the bucketing approach, taking advantage of good versus bad years in the stock market. Now, if you're listening to my podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave a 5-star review. I hope you learned something useful today. Please subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching Money Matters MD. Over and out.